Towards the end of the Middle Ages, the shamans of the Sami people were beginning to gain some infamy in places across Europe. The Catholic Church would grow weary of their presence, and the shamans of the Sami, an indigenous people who inhabited areas of Norway, Sweden and Finland, were considered to be a set of dangerous sorcerers and magicians. While not every Sami was a practicing shaman, there were said to be a select few members that possessed magical ability. In some areas, these shaman would be referred to as Noidi, essentially a shaman of the Sami people, who were known for healing and casting spells of protection. Others saw them as mediators between humans and spirits, and that they were able to enter the spirit world, where they could obtain wisdom of the spirits, to which would be divulged to those amongst the living. One of their goals was to establish or re-establish a balance between the mortal and the immortal worlds, and one of the ways they would do this was through the use of a traditional drum, which we'll speak about in a moment. The Noidi conducted ceremonies, including that which invoked benevolent spirits, to assist with out-of-body experiences, and to traverse spiritual worlds. Sami sorcery usually consisted of the ability to tell vivid fortunes, and predict future events with an eerie accuracy. The whispers of their powers would become so far spread across the Nordic land that according to ancient Norwegian laws, it would become illegal for one to travel to the eastern county of Finnmark to get one's fortune read, as the Sami shaman presence was high in this area. Sami shaman were also said to have divine powers over the elements, and we'll talk about one example in a moment, about a man who was said to have controlled the wind itself. Sami shaman were also known for their magic drum, known as Runebomme, which would be used in rituals to decipher the future and commune with the gods. By using the drum, the shaman would become entranced by the sound produced, and it's understood that shamans believed that their spirit would leave their bodies and travel across lands, where they could visualize everything that was happening in real time. Missionaries of the church would come to believe that Satan himself was providing the shaman with these powers, or that he was living inside the drums, where he spoke his evils in the form of a drumbeat. Others believed that each drum hosted a separate demon, and that during the shaman's fortune telling, the demon would scour the earth with its supernatural speed, and would look for information to feed the shaman and assist with the reading. The demon could also be used to learn of current earthly matters, and could be used by the shaman to spy on royalty, or loved ones, or just about anyone or anything they wanted. The demons would divulge this information to the shaman, but whether directly in conversation or through sound that the shaman had to interpret is not known. Missionaries who were deployed in Finnmark and the surrounding Sami shaman areas were tasked to confiscate and destroy the drums, thus denying the Sami of both their counselling with demons and the communing of their gods. By the 17th century, Sami shaman were demonized for their misunderstood ways, and the shaman who believed that they did possess magical powers and were proud of it were labelled as satanic prophets and witches. It would certainly ensure the witchcraft trials that saw the death of 26 shaman throughout Norway. The demonization of the Sami people would soon see the pinning of another type of sorcery upon them. It was known as Gand, or Diabolicus Gandus in Latin, and was a type of spellcasting that speared fear into the hearts of those who heard it. It would see the shaman casting evil spells from the comforts of their own home, but that their spells were carried by the wind, allowing them to reach great distances, including other countries across Europe, and that it could bring misfortune, plague, and whatever dark ailment that the shaman had in mind. The belief of the Gand and its usage by shamans was only made more real by the conviction of influential contemporaries, such as the acclaimed writer Olaus Magnus, who noted that the Gand was something physical, and that it came at the victim in the form of small arrows. Nordland vicar Peter Das described the Gand as having a physical form in the guise of dark blue flies, otherwise known as the flies of Beelzebub. Other historical accounts note the Gand as being a mouse that had two heads, and that to see it would bring about great calamity. One of the most infamous cases of Sami shamanism comes from the shaman known as Quiwe Baarsen, or Quiwe Baarsen. He was a servant for a noble Norwegian house in the early 17th century, but the activity and status of his life is not known. All we know comes out from his trial that took place on 9th of May in 1627, where he became one of the 26 Sami trials during that time period. Baarsen was accused of sorcery and witchcraft because of his supposed ability to control and manipulate the wind. It all started when a man named Niles came to Baarsen seeking his powers, so that he might use the wind to bolster his sails in his fishing expedition. The idea was that Baarsen would grant Niles with a favourable wind that would see him sail quickly across the waters, allowing them to reach a greater distance and capture more fish. He would promise to pay Baarsen a handsome amount upon the selling of the fish and his safe return. Seeing this as pretty lucrative, Baarsen agreed, and reports in his trial that he took off his right shoe, washed his bare foot in the seawater, and declared an incantation to the wind. Niles and his fishermen gained a favourable sailing wind, which saw them reach their destination of Havag. But during this time, the wife of a fisherman aboard Niles' ship came to Baarsen with concern for her husband. She fretted that her husband would not return to her during this voyage, and so asked the shaman to create more wind and bring the ship back. She would even offer the shaman a keg of beer for his efforts, which Baarsen couldn't say no to. In his trial, he reported throwing a pig into the sea as a means to invoke the wind to do his bidding, but according to Baarsen, the pig flapped about too much in the water as it drowned, and that this caused the spell to go awry. The winds became too strong, and it would see Niles and the entire crew perish in a violent storm. Baarsen was likely accused by the fisherman's wife for the murdering of her husband, and it would gain the attention of the local authorities, which would spur on his trial. Baarsen was asked during his trial whether he'd summoned the wind on other occasions, to which Baarsen replied that he'd done so frequently to aid men aboard ships. He was also questioned about the Gand and the use of magic drums, but Baarsen claimed he had never adopted these forms of Sami magic. He did, however, know about the magic drums and what the Sami called runic spells. He explained that runic spells were casted using the Sami drum and could consist of spells to bring healing and good fortune, as well as to seek counsel from the gods and help with the interpreting of one's future. The drum itself was made of pine root and covered with reindeer hide or buckskin. A piece of wood was used as a handle under the drum, and the claws from every kind of native animal in Finnmark was hung around the drum. 9 lines were painted on the drum to represent their god, the sun, the moon, and a set of animals that each denoted luck or misfortune. Baarsen went on to explain that it was not uncommon for sorcerers to duel using the drum when testing out who was stronger, and that they would paint reindeers locking horns. The reindeers would then animate and proceed to fight until one subdued the other, thus revealing which sorcerer was stronger. Other accounts made by Baarsen include the way in which the shaman would commune with their gods, in that they would forge a bird from copper and hang small pieces of copper from its wings. This would then be placed on top of the drum. After striking the drum, the vibrations would cause the bird to move around. The shaman would then ask his gods a question. The answer to his question would be determined by whichever line of paint on the drum that the bird stopped at. If the bird fell off the drum at any point, however, it was considered to be a terrible omen and signified that the end was near for the shaman. Baarsen would plead guilty to his charges of drowning 5 people via witchcraft. He was sentenced to be burned at the stake. Traditional Sami religion is generally considered to be along the lines of animism, the idea that everything has a soul, or at least a distinct spiritual essence. Animals in particular are very important to some Sami, and some even choose to worship certain animals or certain animal spirits, such as the Haldi, which is said to watch over nature itself. Other Sami beliefs include more traditional ideas of worship, like the worship of thunder gods or more earthly gods. The shamanistic approaches though were soon gouged away by the church, and by the end of the 17th century, most shamanistic practices had died out due to severe oppression in the form of Christianization. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to leave a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your way out, and I'll see you in the next video. Until the next time guys.